Jacob Sinclair had everything money could buy, except one thing: an heir. He had long since given up on love, but there was one thing he couldn't escape: his empire would crumble without someone to inherit it. When he saw a homeless woman, sitting on the same street corner every morning, he knew she was the solution to his problem. Jacob Sinclair is a successful businessman and one of the wealthiest people in the city. He built his empire from scratch, relying on determination and control over every aspect of his life. He doesn't trust anyone easily and keeps his emotions locked away. His past is filled with pain. A betrayal by someone he once loved left him scarred, and since then, he's avoided relationships altogether. Love is a weakness in his eyes. He's learned to rely only on himself, keeping his heart as guarded as the money in his bank account. Jacob's entire life is about control. But as time goes on, he realizes all the wealth he's accumulated, all the power he's gained, will mean nothing if he has no one to pass it on to. The thought nags at him, but even more so is that he doesn't want to get tangled up in a traditional family. He can't bear the idea of another relationship that could end in disappointment, just like the one that shattered him years ago. One morning, while on his usual routine of picking up coffee from his favorite cafe, Jacob notices something unusual. On the corner of the street near the entrance to the shop is a homeless woman sitting with her head down. Jacob had passed her several times, but today, something about her caught his eye. He couldn't pinpoint it, but he felt drawn to her. Her name is Lily. Jacob doesn't know it yet. As he watches her, he starts to think about how he could use that. This woman, someone so far removed from the world he knows, might be the key to solving his problem. He doesn't want a relationship, and he certainly doesn't want the messiness of a traditional family. But an heir, someone to carry on his business and name, that's something he needs. The idea forms quickly in his mind. Jacob decides to approach her with an offer, one that's businesslike, detached, and practical. He'll pay her handsomely to carry his child. It's simple: she lives in his estate during the pregnancy, gives birth to the child, and then leaves with her compensation. No emotional attachments, no strings attached. Just a transaction. At that moment, Jacob feels the weight of his decision. It's direct, but it's the only way he sees to solve his problem. And for the first time in a long while, he feels like he's in control again. One day, he approaches her directly. He explains his offer in clear terms: I need someone to carry my child. I'll pay you a large sum of money, and you'll stay in my home while you're pregnant. After the baby is born, you'll leave, and there will be no contact between us after that. Jacob speaks in a serious tone, showing no emotion. He doesn't explain why he chose her, only that she's the right person for this arrangement. At first, Lily is stunned. She's unsure whether to trust him, but her life is so difficult that she feels she has no choice. She hasn't had a proper meal in days, and the idea of leaving the streets for a safe home is hard to ignore. She decides to take the risk. Arrangements were made and Jacob's lawyer gives her a contract. The lawyer goes over the terms. She will live in Jacob's mansion, receive full care during the pregnancy, and walk away with a large payment once the baby is born. The money will be enough to change her life forever. Lily doesn't understand all the legal terms, but the key points are clear. She signs the papers, hoping this deal will be her way out of poverty. Lily is taken to Jacob's mansion, and it feels like a whole new world. The estate is huge, with shining marble floors, tall windows, and perfectly trimmed gardens. She is shown to her room, which is bigger than any space she has ever lived in. The bed is soft and warm, the bathroom has expensive soaps and shampoos, and the balcony offers a view of a sparkling lake. But even with all this luxury, the house feels cold. Jacob stays distant, barely speaking to her. He provides everything she needs, including healthy food and medical care, but he treats her like part of a business deal. The staff are polite but formal, making her feel like a stranger in the mansion. In the days that follow, Lily tries to adjust. She spends her time walking in the gardens or reading books from the mansion's library. A private doctor checks on her regularly, ensuring the pregnancy is on track. On the surface, she has everything she could want: safety, food, and comfort. Yet, something feels off. Jacob only speaks to her when necessary and always keeps his distance. Lily feels invisible, like she's just there to serve a purpose. She wonders about Jacob, why he made this deal and why he seems so cold. But she keeps those thoughts to herself, knowing she's here for one reason only: to have his child. Lily feels conflicted. She's no longer struggling to survive, but she's not free either. The mansion is beautiful, but it's also lonely. She's grateful to be safe, but she misses feeling like a real person. As the pregnancy progresses, she begins to wonder if the deal she made will truly bring her the freedom she hoped for, or if it will leave her with more questions than answers. As the months pass, Jacob watches Lily with a growing sense of admiration. She is not the fragile, broken woman he had imagined when he first proposed the unconventional arrangement. Instead, Lily exudes a quiet strength that takes him by surprise. Despite her difficult circumstances, she approaches life with resilience, adapting to her new surroundings without complaint. She carries herself with dignity, even in the face of his cold, aloof demeanor. Jacob begins to notice the little things about her. She was bold and expressive, and the more she stayed and was taken care of, the more her beauty shone. Suffering has clad her outward beauty, and it delights Jacob to stare at how things have changed from the first time she stepped into the house. These stir something unfamiliar within him. For the first time in years, he feels a protective instinct, a desire to shield her from the world's cruelties, though he struggles to admit it to himself. Lily, on the other hand, finds her world shifting in ways she never expected. At first, she had agreed to Jacob's proposal purely out of desperation, a lifeline in the storm of her life. But as the baby grows inside her, she feels an unshakable connection forming. It's no longer just a financial arrangement or a transaction to her, it's something deeply personal. Every flutter of movement from the unborn child brings her a sense of purpose she hasn't felt in years. Her maternal instincts awaken, and with them, a fierce determination to protect and nurture the life she's carrying. She knows this child is meant to be Jacob's, but that knowledge doesn't stop her from caring deeply. Her growing bond with the baby is as much about rediscovering her worth as it is about her love for the child. One evening, everything changed. Jacob and Lily find themselves sharing a rare moment of connection over dinner. It begins casually enough, small talk over a meal. But as the conversation unfolds, Lily lets her guard down just a little, revealing fragments of her past. She speaks briefly about her childhood, her struggles, and the dreams she once had but never dared to chase. Her honesty disarms Jacob. For years, he has built emotional walls so high that no one could scale them. But Lily, with her quiet resilience and vulnerability, seems to find a way through. That night, Jacob lies awake, replaying their conversation in his mind. He finds himself drawn to her story, her strength, and the light in her eyes when she talks about the future. What troubles him most is the realization that his feelings for Lily are changing. She was supposed to be a means to an end, a practical solution to a personal problem. But now, he can't stop thinking about her. The walls he spent years constructing begin to crack, and with each passing day, he starts to question whether he's truly as cold and detached as he believed. Jacob, a man who had always prided himself on control and detachment, was caught off guard the moment he laid eyes on the newborn. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, and something in him shifted. This wasn't just the culmination of a business arrangement, it was his child, a part of him, so small and fragile, yet so full of promise. For the first time in years, Jacob felt a connection that reached beyond money, beyond contracts. He had expected the birth to be a formality, a necessary step in securing his legacy. Instead, it awakened something he hadn't felt in a long time: love, vulnerability, and a strange but undeniable sense of belonging. But it wasn't just the baby that stirred these feelings. As he watched Lily cradle the child, her face glowing with the soft light of motherhood, Jacob realized how much she had come to mean to him. Lily, with her quiet strength and resilience, had become more than the homeless woman he had paid to carry his child. She had become someone he couldn't imagine his life without. For Lily, the birth was bittersweet. Holding the baby in her arms for the first time, she felt a wave of emotions she hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just any baby, it was her baby. The little life she had nurtured for 9 months had brought her purpose and joy in a way she hadn't experienced before. But she also knew the reality of their situation. From the beginning, the deal had been clear: she would carry the child, give birth, and then walk away. The money Jacob offered had been life-changing, her ticket out of homelessness, a chance to rebuild her life. Yet, as she looked at the baby and then at Jacob, something inside her wavered. How could she leave behind a child she had carried? And how could she ignore the growing connection she felt with Jacob? The day of her departure loomed closer, and every step of preparation felt heavier than the last. Lily packed the few belongings she had, avoiding Jacob's gaze as much as possible. He had been unusually quiet since the birth, his usual confidence replaced with an unsettling uncertainty. Lily carefully packed her belongings into a small suitcase. The morning was quiet, except for the occasional soft cooing of her son. Today was the day she was leaving Jacob's house, and she felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The agreement was simple: she would carry Jacob's child, and once the baby was born, her part of the deal was over. She would be free to leave. As she approached the door, Jacob stood in her way. His face was different, no longer cold and expressionless. He seemed nervous, almost unsure of himself. After a moment, he spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Lily," he said, "don't go. Please." Lily blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. She paused, her hand tightening on the suitcase handle. "I need you," Jacob continued. "Not just for our son, but for me. I didn't expect this to happen, but I've fallen for you." Lily stared at him, her heart racing. Jacob's confession was the last thing she expected. For months, he had been distant and focused only on his own needs. To her, he had always been someone cold, calculating, and driven by control. Now, here he was, asking her to stay, because he loved her? She felt conflicted. Could she believe him? What if this was just another way to keep her tied to him? Trust didn't come easy to Lily, especially after everything she had been through in her life. "Why now?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Why would you change your mind after all this time?" "Because I've seen what kind of person you are," Jacob replied. "You're strong, caring, and selfless. You didn't just bring our son into the world, you gave me a reason to see life differently. I need you here, Lily. Not just as his mother, but as my partner." Lily took a deep breath. She had always dreamed of starting fresh, leaving behind the life that had brought her so much pain. But as she looked at her son, sleeping peacefully in the crib, she thought about what his life would be like with two parents who truly cared for him. If Jacob was serious about changing, could she give him, and herself, a chance at something new? "All right," she said finally, her voice firm. "I'll stay. But I need you to prove to me that you mean what you say. I'm not here for empty promises, Jacob." Jacob nodded, his expression full of determination. "You'll see," he said. "I'll prove it to you." He tore the agreement to demonstrate the beginning of something new. Jacob didn't waste time. The man who once spent every waking hour at his office began spending more time at home. He took care of their son, learning how to feed him, change diapers, and soothe him when he cried. Slowly, the walls Jacob had built around himself started to come down. For Lily, the change was surprising. Jacob, who had once seemed so distant and unapproachable, began to smile more. He started sharing parts of his life he had never talked about before, his fears, his regrets, and his hopes for the future. He even began to shift the way he ran his businesses, dedicating funds to programs for the homeless, inspired by Lily's past. As weeks turned into months, their relationship grew stronger. They weren't perfect, but they were building something real. Trust replaced doubt, and love began to grow between them. The mansion, once cold and empty, became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and hope for a better future. Jacob's confession that day changed everything, not just for him, but for Lily and their son as well. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one they would write together.